Hello and welcome to another episode of This Is Metal. And tonight we're going to be talking all about Stryper. And Joe, I'm a big Stryper fan, as I know you've told me you are too, and that's part of the reason we're doing this. But I tell you, there's a few things I learned about Stryper and researching and prepping for the show tonight that I did not know about, and we'll be talking a lot about that. But, you know, Stryper is such an interesting band to talk about because aside just from music, I mean, you got the religious angle of the band as well. So I guess let's start the show off, Joe, if you could share with us how you first became a Stryper fan.
Well, at first, just to go back a little bit on my upbringing and upraising, I was raised in a Christian home, and I am a Christian.
Wow.
And so that was what I was allowed to listen to at the time.
Yeah, okay.
I mean? And so Stryper was pretty much the most radical band that was fell into that category of stuff that I liked.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I got introduced to them. You know, I think with To Hell with the Devil, you know, when they came out with that was kind of my introduction to them. So, but before we could get really involved with this, I want to say that it takes a lot of heart, a lot of conviction, and a lot of courage to do what they do, to stand up for what they believe in, because we live in a world where evil shit is now good, and good is now evil shit.
Oh, yeah,
So, and every day it gets worse.
Oh, yeah.
So, bands like Stryper actually right now are needed more than anything, in my opinion.
Yeah, and before we go any further, I got to say, one thing I dig about Michael Sweet is he's probably the most vocal member out there of a band. It's all, you all seen him on social media and stuff, and he does most of the interviews. And anytime anything political, like for example, recently it was revealed that Ted Nugent was suffering from coronavirus, and there's some people kind of laughing about it. And Michael Sweet said something to the effect that I believe we're all human beings, and we should all wish well upon each other, something like that. And he's always got something to say, but what I dig about Michael is he doesn't really, like a lot of people, kind of put his, let's say, personal political view. He kind of tries to stay positive, like you're saying, try to give a good message, as opposed to just be judgmental about other people.
Yeah. I mean, that's the vibe I get from him, from the interviews I've seen and the stories I've heard and different things. That's kind of the general consensus is that they're definitely trying to spread a positive, good message, and they seem like good people. Yeah,
and what's kind of funny is I think the kind of metal fans have been more accepting of Stryper than a lot of people in the church. And I'll tell you, while I might consider myself like a Christian, I'm not one of these guys that goes to church all the time, almost hardly ever, and it's like a lot of people, I think, to be honest, I'd rather go to the church of Stryper than your typical church where, you're kind of, you're being preached to. I mean, you have different types of churches, but I was reading something online where they said, for example, when like religious music really started to become really popular, it was like in the 50s and 60s when you had more like a gospel type of church music, especially like in a lot of these black churches and stuff, the music was more upbeat. Whereas, like I said, Stryper, Stryper, I can rock out pretty much on any Stryper tune, and I'm like, yeah, that's the church I want to belong to,
Exactly. Well, there's two things in common with the church and the dojo, and this is very true in my life as well. I don't belong to any one church.
Yeah.
I don't religiously go to one church at all. But the same thing with the dojo.
Yeah.
It's a place where your spirit can go to be awakened and nourished.
And what is a dojo, Joe?
So if that's in nature, then that's your church.
Yeah.
That's your dojo.
So what is a dojo for people that don't know?
It's where people go to train in martial arts.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
so it's kind of the same thing,
Even people that study martial arts like that, I know, you hear them like, they want to be trained like so they can defend themselves. It's not so much that you want to, tear somebody apart. It's like, I don't really want to use what I know unless I absolutely have to, or maybe even to step in to protect somebody else who's being attacked or something like that.
Absolutely. Self-defense is becoming one of the most crucial things that somebody can possibly have at their disposal, because the average 911 time is 18 to 23 minutes. Well, a lot of bad shit can happen to you in that amount of time.
Yeah, and
so you can't just say, I'll just call the police, or I'll rely on somebody else. Life doesn't always work that way. There's headlines every day that show it.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, now if you go back to the very beginning of Stryper is a band that was formed in Orange County, California in 1983. And of course,
so they've been at it a long time. 1983, man, that's quite a haul and quite an accomplishment for a band that's been through so much.
Yeah, of course they were originally called Rocks for Jim, and they changed the name to Stryper eventually because they realized there was another band going by that name. And I believe an early version of Stryper, when they were still going by the other name, featured C.C. DeVille. But even before that, the band started out. They were originally a trio, three-piece band, which was the two Sweet brothers, and you had Robert Sweet on drums. Michael was a frontman and the lead guitarist, and then they got the bass player Tim Gaines. And originally they were a three-piece, but Michael decided he wanted to kind of focus more on being the frontman and the lead singer, and they got Oz Fox, who really is much more of a lead player. And part of the reason they're saying C.C. DeVille was in an early version of Stryper, but he left because the way they chose to dress, the costumes, C.C. didn't agree with it. And I don't know if he was much of a religious guy as the other three guys in the band, but that's kind of why he left. But it's kind of funny that C.C. would get a start in Stryper, even pre-Poison, and then he'd make it a few years later, like almost 3 years later in Poison.
Right. And also Doug Aldrich.
Yeah, Doug Aldrich, yeah. And I also was I was doing a lot of research online, and I seen this interview with Scott Ian of Anthrax, and he was, of course, Anthrax being from New York, he was saying when Anthrax just started doing shows out here in California, one of the first shows they did was with Stryper, and they didn't know too much about who Stryper was because Stryper was just kind of coming on the scene at the time. And he says, wow, what a diverse audience. He goes, though, and these guys in Stryper, we find out they're a religious band. He goes, we see them backstage. They're kind of in a huddle. And we find out what's going on. They're like in a pre-show prayer. And then Anthrax had no idea that they threw Bibles out into the audience. And this is an Anthrax crowd. And Scott was saying, man, people didn't know why they were throwing the Bibles and the crowd was just throwing back at them. But again, that's kind of always been Stryper's struggle is the metal community versus the church, and it seems like the church has always been more against them than the metal community, which is kind of interesting. For example, I heard Michael talk about they were followers of Jimmy Swaggart, and Jimmy Swaggart didn't like what they were doing. He felt that they were using the Lord's name in their music as a gimmick to make money off of it,
Yeah. Well, the Bible tells us not to judge.
Yeah.
Unless you be judged.
Yeah.
So he's the first one throwing rocks in a glass house.
And we know what happened to him.
As far as their their message and stuff, I think it's from the heart. And,
yeah.
And as far as their struggle goes, here's something interesting that I found out. Okay. Recently, their new album, Even the Devil Believes, charted on Billboard. They got a #1 hit with it. It's the first time in 36 years of their struggle that they've charted that high on Billboard. Now, something in common with that is that 36 shows, when they did their reunion tour, that's what they did. They did 36 shows.
Wow.
And then something else in common with that is 36 lashings from Pontius Pilate to Jesus on the cross.
Yeah.
So he was whipped 36 times. Also, there's 36 origins of disease known to mankind.
Wow.
So that number 36 just kept popping up when I was doing some research today, and I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, nobody's probably even aware of that. And, going back to what you were saying, Joe, I kind of got a similar experience as far as... my introduction to Stryper was To Hell with the Devil, which is kind of interesting. Is that's the album where they had all the videos all over MTV. The stuff was being played. That was kind of, I dare say, the pop album, or the more commercial album.
To Hell with the Devil was a little bit heavier, and that was one of their most popular albums to date.
It's the most
it went platinum, and sold over 2 million copies. and had some great tunes on it. And a lot of people don't know this, even though Timothy Gaines was in the band, he did not play bass on that record.
Oh yeah, and
Brad Cobb did.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, in regards to Hell with the Devil, there's a little controversy about that because the title track, To Hell with the Devil, I mean, a lot of people did not like the title. They did not understand what the song was about. And Michael Sweet said many times that that's part of what Stryper's about. We're trying to not just deliver God's message and our message, but we're trying
to get people to think with their own minds.
Yeah. He says we're not saying we're with the devil. We're saying, people say to hell with you. Well, we're saying to hell with the devil. We don't want people following the devil.
Right.
And it's almost kind of like Motley Crue when they called their album "Shout at the Devil." People thought, oh, they're saying they're with the devil. No, listen to the lyrics.
Right. And then same thing with they've had this problem again recently when they put their album out, Goddamn Evil.
Yeah.
And Walmart refused to sell it.
Yeah, and it's funny because they are a Christian band, and I heard Michael Sweet in an interview I was looking at today online. He was talking about this very album, Goddamn Evil. He says, okay, initially, he goes, we have a lot of problems with like album titles because initially people just look at the album title, Goddamn Evil. They think we're damning God. No, like he says, what I'm trying to say, anyways, he says, and I'm the guy that writes all this stuff, is I wish God, I'm kind of praying that God will damn all the evil out there in the world, That's what I'm on.
Right.
Yeah. And he says, we don't mind we're not trying to get controversy, but if we do, it's all right because people are talking about the band. But I just wish people would kind of, read the lyrics a little better,
Yeah. Give it a chance, open your mind, and think about it a little bit.
But, I'll tell you, in regards to Hell with the Devil, that was my introduction to the band. And first song video I ever heard from Stryper was Calling on You. It's kind of a great little fun pop tune, but it was all over radio and MTV. But I'll tell you what, again, that's another one of those songs, if you have no idea Stryper's a Christian band, you might think it's a guy like calling to a girl, trying to let a girl know, hey, I like you, I'm calling you to come over here. But no, they're like telling people, follow God. God is calling on you, to serve Him. And they're not. See, the cool thing about Stryper, it's great music, but they're not. Even though they're a Christian band, they're not preaching to you. They're just kind of giving you the message through the music. You do what you want with it, but they're not too preachy about it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they got, talk about To Hell with the Devil. That's being one of their most popular albums.
Yeah.
From their past, and then they went on and released their follow-up with that, In God We Trust, in 1988.
Yeah.
And that was the more pop-sounding album.
Yeah.
And a lot more kind of overproduced or polished, and more of a glam metal kind of pop metal kind of thing. But it was also it got some big hits, and but once again, the bass player Timothy Gaines did not play on that record.
Yeah,
these are things that I just found out tonight. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. This guy's been in the band all this time, and two of their most popular albums he didn't even play bass on.
Yeah, there's been friction between him and the other guys in the band for years. It's almost kind of like the I don't know if you're aware of a situation. Probably not much of a Bon Jovi fan, but if you go back to like those first three classic Bon Jovi albums, they're much more of a hair metal band even than they are today. But the point being, you got these guys that you look at the picture of Bon Jovi back in the day, and you got these five guys, and you think those are the guys that play, all the guys that play on the album. Everybody in the band did except for the bass player. I don't know what they had this other guy, Hugh McDonald, that's played with Alice Cooper, and he was a session guy for years. Well, pretty much it was a well-kept secret that the other bass player just did the live shows, and nobody told anything until they finally kicked him out of the band. And then John Bon Jovi just let it kind of come out, say, you know what? He never played on any of the albums. He just did the live shows with us. The other guy's been playing on everything since day one.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. So that was kind of a shock to me to find that out. But again, this album wasn't what really pushed them over the edge. I wouldn't say. Yeah. I mean, it did good. It went gold.
Yeah.
And peaked at number 71. MTV had some hits with some of the videos and some of the songs from that record. So it did okay. It did okay. Between To Hell with the Devil and In God We Trust, it definitely established the Stryper name.
Yeah, and I didn't see this anywhere online when I was doing my research, but I remember when In God We Trust came out, there was a bit of a controversy at the time because they took that from, that's what you read on, the back of, $20 bill, dollar bill, whatever. It always says In God We Trust. And I remember because they had a picture of like some kind of currency on the album cover, and it's been the big bold writing In God We Trust. They were trying to stop that album cover. Say, oh no, you can't duplicate a federal currency or something. But they eventually backed off and were able to release the album cover. But I mean, there are stupid things like that in the world that people really are going to try to create trouble for. But Stryper too. But the interesting thing is they always had this division trying to get the church on their side and kind of the metal community. The metal community seems like was much more accepting. A lot of people in their church felt like, okay, you guys are kind of you're giving a good message, but it seems like you're trying to profit off of your religion. But then I say, in a way, so what? We all got to make a living. You're doing good in the world,
Exactly.
So what?
They're doing what they love to do, and that's really what matters, and and not to pick on the church, but there's a lot of people that look down their noses and think that because they go to church, they're somehow better than you.
Yeah.
And so, and there's a lot of people in the world that's that way. But thankfully in the metal community, there's assholes and apples in the metal community too. Don't get me wrong. But in general, that if you're putting out some good music and you got good intentions and you're talented, they're going to be accepting of it. I mean, even if you don't like what they're doing, these guys individually and collectively are very talented.
Yeah, and then
Michael Sweet, even from 2007, I think 2011, was the singer for Boston.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I kind of wish he would have done at least an album with them besides just a tour, but
no, that would have been great. I know. I would love to hear him have done an album with them guys.
But Michael Sweet too. He's one of these guys that seems like real honest guy. And I was reading the reason he left Boston is because that was shortly after Stryper decided they were getting back together, and he decided, I think that I'd love to do the Boston thing, but I'm going to commit myself to putting Stryper kind of back on the map, and it's kind of interesting getting back to Hell with the Devil, because that remains their most successful album. But they had 3 singles were all over MTV, and they had this show back in the day called Dial MTV, and honestly it was I think number 1 on Dial MTV. Honestly and free, they both made number 1 on Dial MTV. That was a show where people would call up every day. They had a show, and it's kind of like a countdown. And I think one of these songs, let's see, what honestly became their highest charting song, peaking at number 23 on the Billboard chart. And it was the only song that they ever had in the top 40.
Yeah, yep. That's like I said, things are a lot different now in the music industry, and you can't really, it's not really even fair for any band to compare numbers now with numbers to back then, because it's comparing apples and oranges. It's not even on the same plane. But that being said, like I said, Stryper has had a big resurgence, and there's a lot of people supporting them. And one thing that I'm glad to see is that they've kind of stepped up their game. They stepped up their level, and they've gotten heavier. They've gotten more aggressive, and the artwork also, because I'm big into artwork.
Oh yeah.
Their last 4, I think, probably at least the last 4, maybe more, of their album covers are amazing and just beautiful, just awesome. So that right away captures your eye. That's the first thing you see before you hear a single note of the band. You see the album cover. Well, I'm old enough. I grew up in that kind of era. So that stuff still matters to me.
Oh yeah.
And they're doing a really great job with stuff like that. And just to go back to that time frame when Michael Sweet was in Boston, also in 2009, Michael Sweet's wife, Kyle, died from ovarian cancer.
Oh, yeah.
So, that guy's been through some tough times,
Oh, yeah.
And more recently, Oz Fox had a brain tumor removed.
Yeah, he's still posting like updates and stuff, and you gotta give it to Oz that he's still out there, doing. I know there are a couple shows where he was temporarily they had a fill-in guy, but he's still an official member of the band, and hopefully he'll get back out there. And
Oz is a great guy with a huge heart, and he plays in the band with a friend of mine, Drew Hart, in Vegas, and
really?
out on the West Coast. They play in a couple different tribute and cover bands together, and he's just a great guy and a phenomenal guitar player. Super talented guy. Yeah,
I think he's one of the most underrated guitar players. I mean, it's amazing he hasn't been like on the cover of Guitar World magazine, but that's something I'm sure we'll never see. But because he's not a real technical guy, but for that time period, he's one of the most I just gotta say underrated players, I think.
Yeah, right. I agree fully. But to give Timothy Gaines his due, I mean he's a talented musician in his own right and a good bass player, absolutely. And since 2008, he also performed with the band Tourniquet.
Okay.
So he's not just not playing or give up the music. He kept going in a different direction.
And in Tim's defense, probably the one thing, no matter what he does from this point forward, probably the main thing he's going to be known for is being the bass player in Stryper. But that's not a bad thing to be remembered for.
No, it sure isn't, and I'm sure it's actually afforded him some opportunities.
Yeah, and let's talk about the guy that
that there's nothing wrong with that.
Let's talk about the guy that replaced him a few years ago. They got Perry Richardson.
Perry Richardson, right?
The bass player from Firehouse.
Firehouse, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know what his religious background is, but it's kind of interesting that he seems to be one of those guys that fits in kind of nice because I think doesn't say too much. Maybe he knows his place in the band and just shows up and records and does the shows, and that's probably what they like.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a new guy, so to some extent, I'm sure there's some things, contractual things and stuff like that. But they seem to get along really great, at least in the public eye. Again, I don't know the inner workings of the band Stryper, or I don't have any dirt on it, but it seems to be a good fit, and that things are going well for them. And but they've put out several different best of albums and different things with Big Three, Sony Records, and Frontier Records more recently. A couple albums I definitely want to mention that are some of my favorites that are newer are No More Hell to Pay.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Which was released in 2013, and Fallen, which was released in 2015. And the new album, of course, Even the Devil Believes, and then Goddamn Evil also.
Yeah, and I did say
those are some really great albums, and there's some really good songs on there. So don't, like I said before, don't judge this band solely on the stuff that came out in 1985 or 86 and stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but check out what they're doing now. It's pretty good. I think they're a band like a fine wine, and I really mean that. I think they keep getting better.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Joe, you're absolutely right, because what I was getting ready to say is there really is almost like two eras of the band, pre-reunion and, when the band first got together, because since they came back, I dare say every album they've done since is really almost a full-blown on metal album. I mean, I dare say Stryper was more of a glam band back in the day, and today I would say they're much more of a metal band.
Right.
I mean, even I was reading where like the band, they disbanded in 1993 because I was watching this interview and Michael Sweet was saying, I decided to leave the band in 1992. I let the guys know I was leaving because part of it was, the musical landscape was changing. He goes, I like some of those bands. He says, but the other thing is, I felt that like we were kind of, we'd reached that point. And he said, and I figured we're a Christian band, and I felt at the time that myself and some other guys were kind of slipping. Like he said, for example, I became more of a heavy drinker. and we're supposed to be this Christian band. We're up there kind of trying to influence other people, and I felt myself kind of fallen at the time. I wanted to give a shot at a solo career, and so the band actually tried to carry on without Michael, where they did a few shows because they had these show commitments that they had to still follow up on. Oz Fox kind of stepped in as the lead vocal. They did a few shows as a 3-piece, but eventually I guess they realized it's hard to carry on as Stryper without Michael Sweet as a frontman.
Well, not only that, also too, I think it's difficult when you separate family.
Yeah.
And Robert Sweet and Michael Sweet, of course, are brothers.
Yeah.
And people can say that doesn't matter, that doesn't have anything to do with it, but yes, it does.
Yeah, and I think they are very private, even about maybe any family squabbles or differences they might have. They kind of keep that to themselves or just between them. Because before Stryper reunited, like in 2003, there was like a Stryper Expo, I think, in Costa Rica or somewhere like that, and the guys all 4 guys showed up, and they were kind of they hadn't even announced they were getting together, but somebody was put on the Stryper Expo, and they were special guests, and kind of together they were saying, well, we have no plans to get together. And Robert Sweet was talking about, he says, I was telling people, there might be a chance and this and that, and then he says, my brother Michael, he goes out there and he wasn't really feeling it at the time, and he's like, well, we're all doing other things, and Stryper it was a great band when it was, but there's no plans at this time. He goes, I felt at the time, we're giving people different messages, and people ask me, so what's going on? Is Stryper getting back together? Your brother says, you guys aren't, and he says, I knew Tim Gaines wanted to get back together. Oz thought he might want to get back. He says, nobody was really sure at the time, but you could see how when Robert's talking during this interview, you could see he's really struggling. Like, his heart was to really carry on with Stryper, but he's like, not everybody was at that mindset just yet, and it was interesting to see that, this one guy, he really wanted to kind of carry on with the band, but he realized unless all 4 guys were into it, it wasn't really going to work.
Right. Something interesting to note too. There was a time with the Yellow and Black attack in Japan that they actually outsold Motley Crue and Bon Jovi.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep, and that's what led to them being signed with CBS Sony in Japan, and then to this day, they have a special relationship with Japan, and they have Japanese bonus tracks and things like that.
Yeah, and then I don't know the whole story, but the name Stryper has to do with the King James Bible, something along the lines of, and the reason that for the color is yellow and black has something to do with Jesus's stripes. Like he died for our sins and stuff, and that, and it has something to do with that. I don't know the whole story. I have to look into that. I couldn't quite understand it, but that's what I was able to pick up on. And I thought, okay,
the name they kind of associated with a Bible verse in Isaiah, Isaiah 53 verses 5. By His stripes we are healed.
There we go.
And so that's where they came up with the name Stryper.
And see, that's another interesting, like the imagery of the band. Just the colors, it gets people talking. Oh, what's that? Yellow and black, and that had something to do with the album title too, Yellow and Black Attack. And for years they were associated with, people used to accuse them of, those bumblebee, they look like bumblebees and stuff, but
right.
But people really didn't know. And then part of the reason I heard that the church was so against them was because they were opening for like bands like, that was who the other hard rock bands they were opening for, like Bon Jovi and Rat, but church wanted them opening up for other Christian acts and stuff, and they're like, no, these bands you're opening for, they're the devil. We don't support that. But again, probably if they had performed at the church and the church was making money off of Stryper concerts, it probably would have been another thing entirely.
Sure.
And, talking about the imagery of the band, like I said, if you go back to the 80s, I dare say they were much more of a glam band, because, if you look at those videos, the hair was all poofed up and everything. Even Michael Sweet today, you see a picture of Michael Sweet, he looks more like a metal guy than he did back in the day. His hair's not so poofed up. He's got a beard. He's got a beard and everything. And it's a little unshaven, whatever. But he looks much more like a metal guy. And part of the reason is I was reading where like also this other album, Against the Law, it was much more of a heavier album, and there weren't any lyrics about God. This is the first time Stryper had ever done this in their career. I was reading where Robert Sweet had told somebody part of that was that they wanted kind of like say goodbye to their glam image, and they wanted kind of to have more of a metal, more of a rock image, and that was part of a reason for that. And that they had been criticized by some of the critics that were saying, all Stryper does is they talk about nothing but God in their music. I mean, that's the whole point of a band like Stryper. But so people were really getting on them. So they said, okay, well, you're going to criticize us for that, then we're going to do something different. And then even when they kind of answered the call, they were still getting Oh, okay, now Stryper's trying to change what they are.
Yeah, they couldn't win with that one.
Yeah.
And, God has a funny way of working in people's lives.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, again, I don't have any inside information.
Yeah.
I don't know the members of Stryper personally. None of
that.
Yeah.
Just a fan.
But my opinion is that, they kind of turned their backs on God with this record, and it was a failure.
Yeah.
It wasn't successful. It didn't work at all.
Yeah.
So, they realized that, and went back to doing what they what was in their hearts, and to do the right thing, and that's what it really boils down to for every band, whether it's a religious angle or whatever, your sound or your signature your thing is for your band, Band, we've talked about this before. Bands like Megadeth and Metallica, they stepped outside the comfort zone and tried to do this jump on the bandwagon with shitty music, goofy ass alternative sounding shit to jump on the bandwagon. Megadeth and Metallica both did it, and the albums didn't sell well because the fans, the true metal fans, saw through the gimmick and the bullshit and didn't buy it.
Well, it's like you were saying before, Joe. For example, I was having this conversation online with somebody else today. Like, I've been a Motley Crue fan since day one. Now there are people that they only became a fan of Motley Crue when they saw Home Sweet Home all over MTV back in the day. Or there's some people that Motley Crue had a #1 album with Dr. Feelgood. That's their album. And then they forgot all about Motley Crue. But, I've been a fan since day one. And I think that's kind of what you're saying here, too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it is. And I want to go back to what you were talking about earlier when the band took a break.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of went and did their own solo things and whatnot. The most successful of that, by far, large and far, was Michael Sweet. He sold 300,000 units of his first solo record. Yeah. And that's pretty impressive. Yeah. And then, even to this day, outside of Stryper, like you said, he sang for Boston, and he's doing all kinds of projects with Frontier Records, Sweet and Lynch with George Lynch, and
he's got a
variety of other things.
He's got a new record out with Tracy Guns. Yeah. He's got a new record.
He stays busy, and he stays busy because he's an amazingly talented singer.
Yeah.
If you don't like this guy's voice, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, he's got because
he's got one hell of a voice.
Yeah, I think he just gets better and better with everything he does. I mean, in fact, it's funny. Like when he first tried to have a solo career, he first couple of solo albums had more of a religious bent, but then he realized, I just want to go in and kind of do my thing, and a lot of the later solo albums have been more directed towards metal, and I think it sounds better for whatever, maybe because he's just really doing what he wants and not so much like what he thought he had to do,
right. Because
at the beginning of his solo career, it's like, well, I'm the former singer of Stryper. Even when you would get the solo album, first debut solo album from ex-Stryper singer. That's what he's known for. And so, early on in his solo career, he's got that feeling, well, I gotta, it's got to kind of have a religious bent. It's got to make it sound somewhat like Stryper. But I think he quickly realized, no, this is a solo career. I don't have to sound anything like Stryper, because that's part of the idea of having a solo career is you want to do something different.
Right.
And I think he's accomplished that,
Well, the band Stryper has accomplished that too. I think there's people that aren't gonna like them, and for some people it's not your cup of tea. That's okay, and not everybody's gonna like the same things. But I'm really glad to see that they're still a band, that they're still moving forward. And like I said, I think that they just get better and better with each album. And you got to check out some of their more recent records.
Oh yeah, I said,
really good stuff. Yeah. But if you look it up right now, top Christian albums, #1 on Billboard, Stryper, Even the Devil Believes, #1.
Interesting.
That's an amazing accomplishment.
In fact, they remain. I know there are other Christian rock bands out there, but what I was reading today, they remain like the top metal Christian act as far as the most successful. There are other bands, but they haven't just reached the level of Stryper. And here's a few other interesting facts I learned today, like about Robert Sweet, the drummer. Okay, well, first of all, Robert Sweet, it might surprise you to know, Joe, these guys are a lot like the Van Halen story in the sense that the drummer, Robert Sweet, he's actually the older brother. Okay? And Michael Sweet, although he gets a lot more attention for being the front man, he's the younger brother, and it's kind of like, the younger brother had, I don't want to say more talent, but more focus was on him because he was a guitar player. But getting back to Robert, unlike most drummers I was reading, Robert Sweet faces in the direction of stage left or right while playing, and not straight ahead, so that the audience can see him while he's playing, and so he's the audience can see him much better, and their view's not obstructed of him. So because also he has this massive kit, and he began playing like this since 1978, and basically the reason he plays like this again is to enhance his showmanship and his connection with the audience, and that's something you really, I'm surprised more drummers don't think like this, because, again, typically the drummer's the guy in the back of the stage and you're not paying much attention to him, or it's very hard to see. He's the one guy in the band that's very hard to see him, no matter how hard he may be beating those drums,
Right. Yeah, drummers are always in the back.
Yeah.
And there's a few of them that have, can't come up with some over-the-top stuff, and some pretty cool stuff, like Tommy Lee with going over the audience upside down and all of that,
Yeah.
So
and I even,
it's pretty cool.
I even interviewed Carmine Appice once, and he's just one of my favorite drummers, a real physical guy. But Carmine Appice is such an old guy that he's one of the guys that actually influenced John Bonham, if you can believe that.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, because Carmine Appice, people know him from Blue Murder and King Cobra and Ozzy Osbourne, but he goes all the way back to like Rod Stewart and Vanilla Fudge before that. And Carmine, when I interviewed him, he told me, he says, my thing is with the drums, very much like we were saying, Joe, the drummer's always a guy in the backstage. But if you think about any band Carmine's ever been in, like he's been one of the main focal points. And he says, my approach to playing the drums is to kind of bring the drums to the front of a stage, and so to speak. He says, for example, he was the guy that created, out here in California, they used to have a thing called the Tower Records Drumathon. Very much like, these guitar players get together and they kind of jam and see who can jam the fastest. He said he's the one that started that, where you'd get different drummers and they'd all come out and see who could, beat their drums the hardest.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, so just, and then...
here's something interesting for you, too. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Stryper's the first band to ever have 2 songs in MTV's Top 10 simultaneously with their hits Free and Honestly.
Yeah, that's what I was talking... Yeah, and again, Dial MTV was a show back...
Now they have over 10 million albums sold worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember laughing, because back in the day, too, from time to time when I used to watch Headbangers Ball, you would see... you'd see a Stryper video, like probably like Calling to You or something like that, or even some from the Yellow and Black Attack. Occasionally you see a Stryper video on Headbangers Ball, and you're like, I don't know very much of a headbanging band, but okay. But again, back then people had a different idea of what metal was. You'd see a band that looked like Stryper, maybe even without even hearing a lick of the music. That's a metal band. People would just judge it based on how the band looked in the photo,
Right, absolutely. So their new record is available. You can get it, I think, on Amazon or Stryper.com. It's called Even the Devil Believes. Features Blood from Above, Make Love Great Again, Let Him In, Do Unto Others, Even the Devil Believes, How to Fly, Divider, This I Pray, Invitation Only,
Wow.
For God and Rock and Roll, and Middle Finger Messiah.
Yeah, in fact, on one of those, I think it might have been the album "To Hell with," not "To Hell with the Devil," "No More Hell to Pay." They did a cover, believe it or not, of a Doobie Brothers song it's called "Just Jesus Is Just All Right." And again,
right.
And then Deep Purple also covered that song years ago. But my point being is, Stryper is a band that can kind of have fun with a song like that, because if you really listen to a song again, it's not just saying, "Oh, Jesus is just all right." They're saying, like, basically, even Jesus, can fall. Even Jesus, made mistakes.
Right.
So, like, don't be so quick to...
A couple of my favorite songs from that album are "No More Hell to Pay" and "Sympathy."
Oh, yeah.
Great stuff.
And Joe, on our This Is Metal page a few days ago, you posted a great Stryper video. And I really urge people to check this song out. It's from one of probably the last two albums, but it's called "Take It to the Cross." And if you see the video for that song,
that's off of Goddamn Evil.
Yeah, and if you take it, if you check out the video, it's Michael Sweet's, like, in most of the video, he's front and center, but as he should be. But "Take It to the Cross," just a cool message. It's if you knew nothing about Stryper, you can kind of tell by the title, "Take It to the Cross," but it's a full blown on metal.
It's one of their heaviest for sure.
Yeah. And I forget the name of the album, but they did a few years ago when the band first got back together. They put out this great covers album, because a lot of bands were doing that at the time. They've got, like, a cool cover of "Heaven and Hell" by Black Sabbath. They do "Shout It Out Loud" by Kiss. They do a Van Halen tune. There's they even they do a cover of a Boston tune, a piece of Peace of Mind or something, but it's off their "Don't Look Back" album originally. But great cover, and you could that's why I was hoping that Michael Sweet would do a Boston album, because I thought, man, if he
that would be so cool if they did. I wish, it's not over yet. Maybe they will someday, but who knows? But on their 2015 release called "Fallen," they did a cover of "After Forever" from Black Sabbath.
Oh, I'm glad. I almost forgot. Yeah, I would have forgot to bring that up, Joe. Thanks, because that again, "After Forever" comes off Black Sabbath's Master of Reality albums. And I gotta let people know I'm bringing that up because that album is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. And interestingly enough, Black Sabbath used to kind of have a thing where people, Geezer Butler, the bass player who wrote all the Black Sabbath stuff back then, he was a great lyricist, and most of his lyrics were about, either religion or politics or science fiction. And people thought Sabbath were satanic. They weren't sure, because they would wear these, like, crosses you see in pictures of the band back in the day. And Geezer was kind of toying around with the fact that he was raised Christian. And it's funny, I thought Stryper was a perfect band to cover that, because Stryper's probably the last band you'd expect to cover a Black Sabbath song.
Absolutely. And their album, "No More Hell to Pay," charted number 35 on Billboard 200.
Yeah.
And their last three albums before that also charted respectively within the first 100.
Yeah, and it's interesting, when people think of Stryper, probably "To Hell with the Devil," for most people, that's the big breakout album. A lot of people like you and me, Joe, that was our introduction to Stryper. So that album has a special place in our heart. But like I said, I dare say, Stryper is much more of a metal band these days than they were back then. I think they just get better with age, like you said. They're like a fine wine at this point. And the other thing I should bring up, in prepping for a show, I watched a lot of stuff online today, and Michael Sweet did this interview, I don't know where it was, but where he was talking about the guys in Stryper have always kind of had this struggle. Like he said, him and his brother, for example, he said, we were definitely raised Christian, but when we became teenagers, our parents, when they get mad, they call us like heathens, because we were not so much into church music, but we were into bands like Van Halen and Sabbath and other things like that, and Kiss. And he was saying we did kind of go out with our friends and get drunk in that, and So we had to struggle all these years, and when we got old enough, we finally realized, okay, you know what? We had our fun, but we much rather kind of do our music and deliver a positive message. But he said there was always kind of that struggle within the band, and even towards the time when Michael Sweet left the band in '92, I seen something online today where Oz Fox was saying, I think the band kind of had to end at that time too, because he goes, not that any of us were doing really bad things, but he goes, I was also like starting to drink a little heavy, and I was really flirting with girls that would come backstage. Not that it did anything wrong, but I got to a point where I was realizing, hey, you got to get a little more control of yourself. And I said, I think it was the right time for the band to take a break. So that was other reason kind of I think the band fell apart. But it's one of a few bands. Like I said, they came back stronger than ever, and there's no sign they're going to be going away anytime soon. I think the only thing that's really slowed them down is COVID-19 lockdown, but they continued to put out great albums in that time.
Yep. So even the mighty COVID can't stop them.
Yeah. I mean, God is with them basically, and I think God wants us to.
If God's with you, who can be against you?
Yeah, that's a great saying, And anything else, Joe, before we wrap the show up tonight that you like to make people aware of?
Like I said, get familiar with this stuff. Don't just judge these guys on the sing-along pop stuff that you heard in 1986 or whatever. Check out some of these albums, specifically Goddamn Evil, Fallen, No More Hell to Pay, and their newest record, Even the Devil Believes.
Yeah.
You can go on YouTube. They've got a ton of videos. There's some really good stuff, and they're a great band, and they're due respect, and check them out. I
think the final thing I'll say in regards to Stryper tonight, Joe, is the evolution of the band. I think it's been a real honest evolution in the sense that, I think when they had their big hit with To Hell with the Devil, I mean, I think the band looked the way they did. I mean, they didn't just wake up and say, we're going to be a glam band, but they thought, okay, this is what's going on now. We want to be part of this scene. And I think it was a real honest at that time. And I think they eventually got to the point where maybe they felt like the image got a little bigger than what they were doing musically. Even Robert Sweet got to a point where he says, when it came time to do Against the Law, we wanted to kind of do away with the glam image. And I think, like I said, they come back much more metal. I don't think it was anything they really set out to do. They just say, you know what, it's time for our music to kind of grow. I think that growth was, an honest evolution. I don't think it was like, plotted or anything like that. And I think that's why people respect Stryper, because I don't think they would put out an album if they really didn't feel like they could get behind it,
Absolutely. Good stuff. Check it out.
And finally, Joe, I know you've been having some issues on Facebook, and your personal page isn't up right now. Do you want to talk at all about that?
Well, the verdict's still out on all of that, so we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, This Is Metal show is going to continue, and please support it. Please go on the Facebook page, post your comments, your questions, and all of that stuff still. And the Scream King record is getting finished, and will definitely be available sometime in June. I'll have more information on that, and that'll be posted and put out real soon, along with the video Reign of Hellfire. So,
and a final question.
Be on the lookout for that soon. Final
question. Now that's all coming in June, but do you think the video will be coming in June as well?
Yeah. The video is going to be hopefully real soon, within a week or two. I hope that Raphael will have it finished.
So, great.
It's just editing and mixing, getting everything down before we release it. So
I mean, I can't believe, Joe.
We're real close.
Yeah, I can't believe, Joe. We're almost like midway through this year, but we've been on a roll lately. I mean, we continue to build out shows, and I got to let people know that the people that join us each time we do this, you're a big part of that, because Joe and I have seen with the This Is Metal page, the page just continues to grow on a daily basis. I mean, it started out as kind of an organic thing we were doing once a month, and it's become so popular that I started up the page, and we got to a point a few weeks ago where we had 100 people. That doesn't seem like a lot, but it is, and even since the last show we did, now we're up to 109, and that grows every day. And so we got to thank the people. And we started doing this like one show a month, but Joe and I have so much fun doing it, and we're constantly thinking, what can the next show be on? And we're not going to tell you what's next because we got a lot of great stuff planned. But I will say this, Joe, we start out doing a show once a month, and we've got enough shows for the rest of this year that they're already in the can. So we got enough material already for the rest of this year. But rather than hold new shows off till next year, that's why we're rolling out 2 shows a month now. So we're at the point where we're doing bonus shows. So I think we're on a great trend. Yeah. So you take care, Joe.
I enjoy it and I look forward to it.
You take care, Joe, and I'll be talking to you later. Bye-bye.
You too. Later.